Hello, thank you for joining this episode of ContentoNow regarding news, war, and spirituality. Joining us from Istanbul, Turkey, Yogesh, Sharda. Hello to you, Yogesh.
Hello.
One of the teachers and the experienced leaders regarding spirituality of Brahma Kumaris. We were meeting in India, from all places, in Rajasthan. I think it was the 6th of October. And the 7th of October, the war began here in the Middle East. Jewish people, Muslim people, Israel, Hamas, ISIS, throughout these days, the main questions is regarding the Israelis that are being kidnapped, where they're going to be released, and how the negotiations are taking place. And I would love to have, first of all, your personal perspective when you first heard about this awful news. How did you respond? What did you feel?
Well, certainly when I first heard about it, there was a sense of great shock that this had taken place. But then also it reminded me of what I have been studying in my spiritual upbringing, my spiritual studies, that humanity is passing through a period of great darkness at the moment. And so things like this, which happened in this region and are also happening in other parts of the world, it's just an indication for me that there's a great need for us to revisit the important spiritual questions which help to make life more peaceful. So these were my initial feelings at that time.
Throughout this show, we're going to be showing a variety of testimonials of Israelis, even of Palestinians, Jewish people, Muslim peoples. One of them was recorded in the Israeli prison. He was one of the terrorists from Hamas, ISIS, after he murdered people, and he was caught and brought to the Israeli forces.
شو المحل اللي اليهود ما بقصفوا ابدا؟
المستشفيات.
يعني وشو العلاقه بين المستشفيات والانفاق هذه؟
المستشفيات اغلب المصايب بتخبى من المستشفيات. مثلا الشفا فيها طابق بودرة، ممكن في البودرة. شفا كبيرة.
اوكي. مش
صغيرة الشفا تبعها. اكيد. في بتخبوا
في شيء. الكبار يعني الأروس. المسائل هذه اللي بيقعدوا في شيفا منهم من حسب رايك؟
الكبار زي الصنواع زي هذول كلهم بيقعدوا هناك. الكبيرة السياسية والعسكرية كلهم بيقعدوا هناك.
Everybody, including Sinwar and all the terrorists, are, he's saying, in Shifa hospital, within Gaza, within the city of Gaza, using people, innocent people, ill people, as a shelter. What do you think about this practical situation regarding the spiritual values that you are talking about, how it can be combined and implemented in ground?
What I'm seeing happening here, and also, as I mentioned, in other parts of the world, are really symptoms of a much deeper lying malaise within humanity and human consciousness. And that is that we seem to have forgotten our common brotherhood, our common sense of humanity. And when that's lost, then, as the situation continues to expand, we see further and further acts of violence and disrespect, and not respecting the rights of others. So I think we can look at solutions simply on the surface, but our interest really, and certainly for me in the spiritual dimension, is also to look more deeply at what is the root cause of why we do come into conflict. Why do people fight? Isn't there a better way of us coming together and solving the problems that we have? There's a phrase which I like very much, and that is connection before solution. If we simply try to find a solution to anything without coming together first as human beings, as people, as spiritual beings, then it's simply going to be a number of heads clashing together against each other to try and find a solution. But if we first connect as people and as human beings, we recognize the common humanity that we have. When our hearts come together in this way, then I believe it's more possible to find meaningful and lasting solutions to what you've just said and to other scenarios also. And I think that's the area of interest for me.
So let's talk about connections, about gathering, about people from both sides that are coming together. We are broadcasting here, we're based in Tel Aviv, broadcasting worldwide, and you are based and broadcasting to us from Istanbul, Turkey, a state with, I think it's 99% or more that are Muslims, Sunnis. Here, most of the populations, not all of them, are Jews. Take me to practical life. When you're going after this show, before this show in Istanbul, talking with people, Muslim people's the majority, about Israel, about Jewish people, what do you feel is their initial response?
Well, initially, there is a lot of anger as to what's happening. And that anger sometimes is very naked to see in just the way people are expressing themselves. But I may add, from my perspective, I try not to see somebody first as a religious label or as the label of nationality or the label of race or the label of their socio-economic demographic. If I see somebody simply first as a Muslim or a Jew or a Hindu or a Sikh or a Christian, then I'm not honoring who that individual is. So for me, firstly, I need to root myself in what we call as spiritual awareness, in soul consciousness, to become aware of my deeper identity. And then when I speak to people here, I feel I'm better able to not just speak words which can help or comfort them, but also to emit some peaceful energy, some peaceful vibration that can help to comfort and soothe the individual who's in front of me, who may be burning with anger. So I think the first step for me is to look at true identity, and I must be rooted in my spiritual identity before I speak to someone, especially when it comes to challenging and sensitive topics.
You're talking about the blood that is boiling and trying to go to the deep understanding of who the person really is before he's a Muslim or Jew or from what states or the other. But you said that there is a lot of anger in the street. One of our colleagues in Malaysia from Kuala Lumpur just sent us a video with a demonstration, and you can see hundreds of thousands in the street screaming against the state of Israel, against Jewish people, free Palestine. Let's see that. They're shouting, Allah, Allah, and I'm sure that you've been in demonstration like this, also in Turkey, in Istanbul, in Ankara. So people are talking about God, Allah, and yet they are taking this energy towards a different place, not of connection that you're saying and sharing and implementing. So, Yogesh, how do you think it can be done practically in the streets in 2023, 2024, in this coming year?
Well, what we try and do here when we have gatherings, and we hope this message and spreads out, this experience expands out to other people, is that before we say anything, let's sit together and be quiet, and let's just spend a few moments connecting with our inner peace. And if we can do that, if we can connect with our inner peace and make the mind quiet, then our thinking, our head works more constructively and productively. When you're in the middle of a riot or a demonstration, of course, you cannot do anything at that time. But what you can do is, in the rest of your life, to try and be an example of living peacefully, living with values, and organizing gatherings where people can come together, be peaceful together. And I think people do also feel, the people I'm in touch with here, people I talk to, that humanity is lost today. We are lost, and it's almost like the madness of the ego has taken over. And in order for us to find a sensible, civilized solution to the conflict, to any kind of problem we find in the world, it's really necessary to, first of all, find the peace within ourselves. When it comes to connection, Netanel, what I was referring to is, firstly, I need to connect with my inner peace. And that means I need to step back from my own biases, my prejudices, even my own difficult experiences of the past. And just to be aware of myself as a peaceful soul. And then when I see you, then I'll be able to connect with you, firstly, as another spiritual being, as a soul, as a human being. And I would call that as the first level of relationship that we have, is our spiritual relationship. But today, that spiritual relationship has been suppressed. And we all tend to live in the second layer of relationship, which is when I see another person, I see the gender, the race, the nationality, the religion, and that's called ego consciousness. So as long as we're living in ego consciousness, there can never be real peace, acceptance, and appreciation for each other. So before all that, I do need to step back into my spiritual awareness and see you as another spiritual being. And this creates a bridge of respect and acceptance through which we can communicate well and find solutions together. The connection before a solution.
Yet many testimonials of so many atrocities that are happening. So we're going to be talking about solutions and creating a bridge. How would you recommend people can reach this bridge from Istanbul, Tel Aviv, Gaza, other countries, creating any kind of hope? And yet there's so many stories about things that have happened to Israelis. Let's see another testimonials, please.
Hello, can you hear me? Am I getting through to you? Hello, do you miss me? I hear you say you do, but not the way I'm missing you. Kiss the rain whenever you need me. Kiss the rain whenever I'm gone too long. If your lips feel lonely and thirsty, kiss the rain and wait for the dawn. Kiss the rain, kiss the rain.
So many little children at the age of 10 months, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 12 years that were kidnapped. So, is there any word of, you think that conciliation and getting together and building trust from this deep situation, it can be done?
It's of course a big challenge, but it needs the adults first to work on themselves. If the adults can work on learning how to forgive, learning how to emerge the best in themselves, learning how to love, then I think there's a chance or a possibility for the children to be influenced by that as well. Children will naturally be influenced by the behavior of parents and adults in general. So I do find that it is our actions and our behavior as adults. And therefore, I think it's important for us to explore topics which generally tend to be sidelined and to bring them into the mainstream, like what does it mean to forgive? How can we learn to forgive each other? How can we learn to get along with each other? What is the basis of being able to respect another person? I feel these topics need to be explored more in the mainstream, not on the fringes of society. Because my firm belief is that at the very bottom of the human consciousness, there is goodness, there is truth, there is purity, there is beauty. And generally what we find is that when in the world there is some kind of natural disaster, maybe an earthquake or a tsunami, flood somewhere, what tends to happen is people rush to offer help. Food and blankets and tents and etc. At that time, we don't think, well, hold on, what passport do those people have? Or what is their skin color? What is their faith belief or their religion? At that time, we think people are suffering. And so we have this natural compassion of wanting to help people. And that's what's happened around the world. But then what happens after a while is we again tend to forget that, and we fall once again back into those, what I call as ego consciousness, back into those labels of nationality, religion, color, and so on. So the question is that basic goodness, which is at our very core, which emerges in times of natural disaster, how can we keep it emerged all the time? And I think that takes some training, that takes work, that takes an education, which I think we need to pay more attention to. And creating that wave of spiritual awareness amongst ourselves, and also to influence and guide the younger generation.
You know, Yogesh, you mentioned the ability of mankind to get together when something regarding nature is happening. And one of the most meaningful moments in the Israeli history is being remembered by a little child. Her name is Shiran Franco. She was an Israeli in Turkey throughout the times of the first big earthquake that happened. And there were many, many wounded people, obviously, and dead people. And a delegation from the Israeli IDF went there trying to save Turkish people, people that were underneath. And after 10 days, suddenly, like a miracle, they found this little girl, Shiran, in Turkey, and they saved her. It was a complete miracle. It was top headlines worldwide. Let's see, with your permission, one glimpse of this memory that happened in between Turkey and Israel after the earthquake.
השעה 4:30 לפנות בוקר, בני המשפחה פורשים והולכים לישון מיואשים. אבל צוות החילוץ אינו מוותר. ואז פתאום נס משמיים. בין רעש פטיש האוויר, קול של ילדה לפתע. חרישי חרישי, אבל אין מתוק ממנו. תראו את פני המחלצים, יש ברכה לעמלם. בני משפחת פרנקו מזילים דמעה. 5 בבוקר מביאים אלונקה. עוד מעט, עוד רגע קט, תראו מחזה שרבים במקום תיארו אותו כלידה. לידה שנייה. כמעט כולם שם החסירו פעימה.
לקשות לה את העיניים. לקשות לה את העיניים. שים אותה. סמיכה פה.
שירן חיה, בריאה ושלמה, ואפילו לא נפגעה. 100 שעות היא הייתה תחת ההריסות.
100 hours under the ruins, and it like a rebirth. In Turkey, she was brought out living. The first request was if we can offer a cup of Coca-Cola. This is what she wanted. So is there a way to drone this energy that is beyond politics, it's beyond physical identities, to this war, to this conflict, Yogesh?
It takes an education, Netanel, that's what I see. And I think one of the things we're trying to do in Brahma Kumaris is very much an educational approach to spirituality, which is why we're known as a university. So I think it's important for us to continue to, first of all, live these things, live these spiritual principles in our practical lives, and then to create opportunities for other people also to learn as much as they want to in whatever way they want to. And what gives me a lot of hope is I do believe that this spiritual journey is a return journey. It's a return journey back to our true inner self, back to our inner peace, back to our inner balance. What has happened over time is we've drifted away from that and have fallen into these behaviors we see today. But there's a reason why, you know, people talk about how can I find peace? How can we find peace? You know, why do we want to find anything? It implies that we've lost it at some point. How can we find happiness? It indicates that it's something which has been lost. So the journey to bringing our best humanity out is a return journey. And therefore, I believe it's possible for every person to make, but there's a need for an education in these things. It needs to be talked about more in the mainstream. And we need to bring it more and more into, you know, our daily conversations.
You know, it was only a few months ago, not long ago, that the Israeli president, Yitzhak Herzog, met the Turkish president, Erdogan. They had a great meeting. It was in Turkey. Since then, the dialogue after the war became very, very challenging. Let's listen to the Israeli president, Yitzhak Herzog.
Adolf Hitler's book, translated to Arabic, Mein Kampf. It's the book that led to the Holocaust and the book that led to World War II. This is the book that led to his victory in elections in Germany, which led to the worst atrocity of humankind, which the British fought against. Well, this book was found just a few days ago in northern Gaza in a children's living room, which was turned into a military operation base of Hamas, on the body of one of the terrorists and murderers of Hamas. And he even marked, he wrote notes, he marked He marked and learned again and again Adolf Hitler's ideology of hating the Jews, of killing the Jews, of burning the Jews, of slaughtering the Jews. This is the real warrior act. So all those who demonstrated yesterday, I'm not saying that all of them support Hitler, but all I'm saying is by omitting to understand what Hamas ideology is all about, they're basically supporting this ideology.
So while Yogesh, you and Brahma Kumaris, the biggest spiritual university around the world, teaches spirituality, teaches divine values, there are the alternative schools for part of the population in Gaza. They are the only schools. Some of them are teaching this.
Well, my conviction is based upon this, that ultimately light is greater than darkness. Light has a source, darkness doesn't. And therefore, it's very important for me to continue to try and live in the light or with the light and spread the light through my own example and through my words as much as I can. And I believe that the light in the hearts of other people also can be ignited if we have that attention and awareness to continue to spread our goodness to other people above and beyond, as I say, the second level of relationship, above and beyond race, religion, color, nationality, and so on. And I think it's important not just to know these things, not just to accept these things, not just to believe these things, but to live these things. That's what makes the difference, I believe, to live in this spiritual awareness. And that's the power of example, which I think can awaken the minds of others. There's lots and lots of literature in the world. There's, hundreds of millions of books of people with their own opinions about things. And that's fine. That's the only way it can be. Everybody has a different opinion. But I do believe that when we are living the highest values possible to us, it's something that goes beyond words. It touches hearts and inspires others also to reach for the best in themselves. As it is often said, actions do speak louder than words. And the best form of teaching anything is to be a model, to be an example. I think that's what's missing today. And that's what I feel we have to give more priority to.
Let's see another testimonial and another perspective. And while you're talking about let's be spiritual, let's act spiritual more than talk about, I would love to ask you a question, which is, if you would have 30 seconds or 30 minutes or 3 days with someone from Hamas ISIS that is entering BK Center in Istanbul, and he says, hey, Yogesh, I heard you on the show, I would like to take one step further. The first question would be, would you accept him? He was part of the massacre. Personally, he come forward and tell you, yes, I was part of it. The first question is, would you be able, deeply in your heart, to accept and teach him?
First thing would be, I would try not to see somebody as the label, but I would see there is a human there. There is a soul there. That soul, whoever that soul may be, is my brother's soul. That soul is also a child of God. And one thing I have learned over the years is you cannot serve what you hate or you dislike. And so if I wish to share some peace and some light with that soul, I must look beyond just the action that he or she may have done. And I must see there's a soul behind that action. Now, the way I see it is that whenever anyone in your family, for example, if they perform any kind of bad action, even something simple, you may not like what they do, but it's still your brother, it's still your sister. In a family, there is a blood connection. So what I have learned in my spiritual upbringing is that first and foremost, I must see every other individual as a soul, as a child of God, and as part of this unlimited spiritual family. And if that vision, if that attitude is firm, then I can be in that inner position to be able to help and serve someone who may have done something wrong. In this situation, it's of course very extreme, but whether it's less extreme or more extreme, the principle is the same. If I connect with the divine, can I have such a feeling towards helping someone to actually return to their divinity, to their spirituality?
Yet, people would say, but Yogesh, he was part of the massacre, he supported it, he was there, he should be punished first. What would you tell them?
Punishing that person is somebody else's responsibility. That wouldn't be my responsibility as someone who's living and sharing spirituality. So that side of things is not something that I would consider to be my duty. My duty is to uplift others spiritually and to help them to come back to their own spiritual divinity, knowing that also every action a person does stays with them, and at some point in time, each soul does have to look at the actions they have done.
The question would be, would you say, I believe, according to the karma laws, that the punishment will come throughout the godly divine program? Or you would say, hey, dear guy, thank you for approaching my center, but yet I would like to, it's not my duty. I'm a teacher, I'm a spiritual leader, but I have a friend that is a policeman in Istanbul. I will give him a call because maybe a punishment should be done first.
Well, I see what you're saying, but the number of people coming to our centers, out of 100 people who come to a talk, maybe 50 have been thieves, 50 have done bad things. So should I check them all out and see what they have done before accepting them? I think there's all kinds of actions people have done which basically are wrong or are hurtful. Of course, this situation is very extreme. And certainly whatever happens to that individual according to the laws of the land or the laws of the world, that's another story.
I know it's another story, but in order to build a bridge, let's be on that break for a while. You're saying it's another story, yet because we're dealing with practical people, how do you think this break should be part of the theory? Or you're saying, let's leave it apart, someone else, someone else's responsibility? Or you're saying, it's something that should be done. I think someone should call the police. If he didn't call, I will call, because we're obeying laws of karma, but laws of a country. And I think in order to bridge to spirituality, this is what I'm asking, how this law of country should be implemented according to your perspective.
I mean, I agree with you there. If a person has broken any kind of law, then as let's say a citizen of the country, if it's my duty to report that to the relevant authorities, then let me take that action according to what is the law of the land. But also in terms of my own self, I mustn't forget my own spirituality within that. What's behind all of the actions we do, and this is the important part for me, is the consciousness, the thoughts, the intentions, the motive, the attitude with which I behave. So if I try to create any kind of justice, but with the energy of anger or the energy of hate, then I'm simply using the wrong energy to try and create justice. I'm using the same energy which was used to do the wrong thing in the first place. In simple terms, if I wish to create peace anywhere, I have to be peaceful as I do it. It doesn't work if I'm calling for peace, but my mind is full of anger and hatred. Be peaceful, be at peace, and then take an action to help to create peace. I think there's a difference between being anti-war and being pro-peace. Anti-war is the wrong energies. Pro-peace helps to create peace through my thoughts, my attitude, and also my behavior.
So if I understand you correctly, you're saying, yes, I, Yogesh, and people that I know, and I recommend it, it's part of the spiritual journey, please, peacefully call the police.
Well, if such a situation arises, I don't think it'll arise. If it arises, then I may consider that either myself or somebody else.
Another testimonial, Yogesh, that is coming throughout these very, very intriguing times of war here in Israel and in Gaza.
احضر الفيديو للآخر بس وسع مخك.
ولا غزة ولا بطيخ، سيب غزة للحكومة ياخذوا الكراسي وبدناش حق ولا حاجة منهم. احنا هجرنا بسبب حكومة حماس. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل فيكم. بس حماس يا
أهل غزة فيش معهم لقمة عيش ياكلوها. نعم وبسألونا ليش طلعنا من لبنان.
هذول الشباب هاجوا من غزة على أوروبا، وهذا قبل العملية العسكرية. انهزموا طلعوا من الجوع، من الفقر، من الاضطهاد، من الحياة الصعبة، من المأساة، لأنه حق الشعب الفلسطيني يعيش حياته مثل باقي الشعوب في العالم. فوق هذا حماس زادت عليهم ارتكاب عمل شيطاني، زادوا عليهم ايش؟ اعتدوا على البلدات اليهودية باسم الدين وباسم الشريعة وباسم الوطنية، بيضحكوا على الشعب، عبوا روسهم خلوهم يفوتوا يقتلوا ناس أبرياء ما لهنش دخل، ناس محتفلين. هذا بدل قديش عندكم حقد وكراهية. بتحكوا باسم الدين، أنو دين؟ أنتم بتعرفوا الدين؟ وينو الدين؟ أنو دين الإسلام اللي قال إنك تقتل ناس عزل، تخطف ختيارة وتتهبلوا وتتمسخروا عليه، وتفوتوا تسرقوا وترقدوا على البرادات، تفتحوا البرادات تاكلوا، لأنكم جوعانين، لأنكم حسودين. الشعب اللي هون الإسرائيلي شبعان، فتحوا لكم المعابر، ولكن العامل الفلسطيني من غزة كان يفوت ياخذ 600 شيكل يوميا، انتم قطعتوا رزقهم، الضفة سكرت قطعتوا رزقهم، كله بسببكم، بسبب افعالكم وتفكيركم العقيم. شو استفدتوا هسه يعني؟ هي الشعب الفلسطيني قاعد بتدبح يعني، شو استفدنا؟ حسرة عليه الشعب الفقير، نزل اولادك يقاتلوا، ما ايام انتم متخبيين ولا قاعدين بدبي بتاكلوا مناسف وعايشين باوروبا، اولادكم بتعلموا احسن جامعات، ولا بتبيعوا وطنية على الفلسطيني الفقير وانت عايش برفاهية، بتضحكوا عليهن باسم الدين واسم الوطنية. لازم الشعب كله يثور ضدكم، انتوا السبب، انتوا اللي دمرتوا الشعب. بكفي 50 سنة، كل 3 سنين حرب جديدة عشان مصالحكم وعشان الكراسي. اطلعوا منها، خلوا الشعب يعيش، الشعب تعبان حقه يعيش، ولا شعب احسن من الشعب الفلسطيني. بكفي عاد، بكفي التاجروا بالدين، هذا لا يرضى الدين ولا يرضى الاسلام. فكروا ناس مبسوطين يعني نشوف الاولاد بتتذبح والنسوان بتتقتل وانتم متخبيين واولادكم بتعلموا باوروبا طشات.
Who are, from your perspective?
Well, all criminals, I think, are lost. The human race is lost today. If I had one word to describe the condition of humanity as a whole, it's lost. And our real enemy is not another person or another group or another religion or another nationality. The real enemy is ego. And breeding within ego are these germs of anger, possessiveness, revenge, jealousy, territorialism. It's the ego we have to work on, and that has to be mainstream. Now, Einstein is often quoted. One of the quotes, apparently, he said is something like, we cannot find a solution from the same level of consciousness which created the problem. In my view, in essence, we have a consciousness problem. It's the consciousness we have to work on and make it mainstream, and never let go of that vision that, am I in soul consciousness? Am I in spiritual consciousness? Only then can meaningful solutions arise. Otherwise, it's like a temporary stopgap. And then, calling and counter calling and blaming and counter blaming, the cycle simply continues if we are in that level of consciousness. When we raise our consciousness and become spiritually aware, new solutions arise, but also we have the strength, the power to implement those solutions in our lives. And I think that's where, for me, meditation is a very big part of life, because it's through that I'm able to get power to apply these ideas in the practical life.
It would be great, you've mentioned meditation, Yogesh, that maybe you will sculpture a hopeful, practical future, but instead of in a dialogue, in an interview, as part of this interview, a few moments that you will leading a meditation that will help people here in Israel, in Istanbul, in Gaza, that will seeing you to sculpture the future. Okay, in 1 month, in 2 months, in 3 months, in 4 months, in a year, in 2 years, someone would put a flag. Sorry for that, it's a practical flag of a identity in another place, in another land. What would be the next step? A hopeful one when you're talking about peace. So maybe throughout the meditation you will be able to sculpture this vision in a few moments. Please.
Okay, so a little meditation now.
A little meditation now, reflecting this vision of peace after the war.
I'm going to share a few thoughts about what I call as the journey inward, the journey upward, and the journey outward. Okay, so you may like to have your eyes half open or completely closed as you feel comfortable. So the first step, always sitting comfortably. I bring my attention from the world outside to the world inside me. The world outside is the world of sound, of doing, of action. And I cannot control the world outside. But the world inside, the world of my thoughts, of my feelings, and of my experiences, this world is in my own hands. And so I start by asking myself, who am I? I am not what I do. I am not what I have. I am not the roles and the labels which I carry. Who am I behind the masks, behind the labels? I bring my attention up towards my face. I bring my attention to the center of the forehead. And I become aware of the first truth. That is, I am a spiritual energy. I am a soul, a sparkling star in the center of the forehead. I am peace. I am light. I am eternal. Now I turn my thoughts to the one supreme, the one who is called the mother and the father of all souls, the ocean of peace, the one who accepts me as I am, the one who knows me better than I know myself, the one who has been watching my entire story through time, the one who does not see my weakness. I connect my mind, my heart, to this true friend of the soul. I experience the deep peace, the deep silence, the purest love of this one supreme soul. Through that, my own divinity is awakened. And with this new energy, I am able to see beyond today. I am able to see the true beauty of humanity. I am able to contribute towards creating a time of peace, of unity, of acceptance with my thoughts, with my words, and with my actions. I express this divinity where human hearts are filled and human heads are cool. The best within each person is naturally emerged.
Very, very meaningful and very, very powerful. You know, it's so unique to create this kind of hope meditation throughout this troubled water in the Middle East and the world right now. I want to thank you very, very much, Yogesh Sharda, joining us from Istanbul, from Brahma Kumaris, one of the biggest spiritual universities in the world, centers around 130 countries, even in these challenging times. Thank you very, very much, Yogesh.
Netanel, thanks to you and also for all that you do for people. I know it goes around the world to share messages of hope and messages of peace, which all human beings around the world need to hear and reflect on more. So thanks to you and also your team.
Thank you very much for your kind words, and thank you all for joining us here on this episode of News, War, unfortunately, yet Spirituality, ContentoNow TV.